Director of Conexxus. I'd like to welcome you to the Combating Card Crime at the Fuel Island. The session today is really germane to a lot of what we're hearing in the press. Every day in my Google inbox, I'm getting 5 or 6 announcements of either an ATM or a dispenser being skimmed in the United States. And it seems like it's this time of year, but certainly what I've been hearing from our industry is that this is a highly relevant problem that we need to deal with. And so what we've put together is a panel of experts who are going to work with you on what you can do to protect your island. Before we get started, I'd like to talk about Conexxus. Conexxus is a nonprofit. We are independent from NACS. We are not part of NACS. However, we work very closely with NACS as a technology partner. We are volunteer-driven and manned by volunteers with a few staff. Yes, we set standards when it comes to data exchange. I dare say that 100% of you are out there using some standard that was created by Conexxus in one way, shape, or form. We do data exchange, security, and payments. We provide clarity on emerging technologies, and we identify emerging trends and educate on those trends. We advocate for our industry. We look for open standards, even outside of the industry, standards that might be affecting us. We advocate for innovation to interact with our industry so that we remain competitive. And we advocate also for open competition within the system space. Most importantly, we improve profitability. That is our #1 goal. I'd like to also remind you that we have our annual convention or conference coming up this May 1st through 5th. It's going to be in Lowe's, Ventana Canyon. It's a place we've been before. A great place, great resort destination. Registration opened a couple of days ago, so if you are looking to get engaged with Conexxus, looking to learn more about the technology that's shaping the retail space in our industry, I urge you to join up and meet us out in Lowe's for the annual conference. Before we get started, the way that this is going to work, you're all going to be on mute. We have well over 250 people on the call right now. What we want to do is get through the presentation, but as you're hearing the presentation, feel free to type in any questions that you have. Ann Zecca, who works with Conexxus, will be accumulating those questions, and Cara will be handling the answering of those questions in the order that they come in. So make sure that you get your question in first, so that we have we've set adequate time at the end of the session. I just want to make sure we get to all the questions that are out there. So feel free to type those questions out. We will not be opening up the microphone. As I said, we've got a lot of people on this call, and we want to keep the call clarity as clean as possible. I'd like to introduce our expert panel. The moderator today is Cara Gunderson. She's POS Manager for Citgo Petroleum Corporation. I've known Cara for many years, starting with her work in WorldPay. She's now moved over to Citgo and is running the card ops over there and the POS operations over there. Most notably, she is the Data Security Committee Chairperson for Conexxus. And all of our data security work, be it PCI, EMV, trying to get down to what it really means and what is the best way for us to approach these things, all of that work is centered within the Data Security Committee. So Cara is very, very instrumental in what Conexxus does on the security side. Cara also is a co-chair of the EMF implementation forum. So her group within that forum, and Conexxus is also a member, that work is going to really define how EMV is implemented within our industry, and it's highly important in reducing costs, reducing time to market, and all the complexities of EMV. We're also lucky to have Luke Grant, North American Product Manager for Payment Systems with Gilbarco Veeder-Root. Luke has been with Danaher, and you probably have seen him in his capacity with Gilbarco Veeder-Root. He also is participating in the EMF implementation forum, and we're glad to have him here to talk about his expertise. Also, we have Tim Weston. He's Senior Product Manager of Payment North America, Wayne Fueling Systems. Tim has well over a decade of experience in payment systems, various companies, most recently with Wayne for, I believe, the last decade. Tim has been very instrumental in engineering and developing their EMV platform, as well as other payment platforms within the Dispenser portfolio of Wayne. Lastly, we've got Doug Spencer. Doug is Director of Products and Services at NACS. In his capacity, he identifies and brings to market products that improve the profitability and the viability of the NACS membership and the convenience store industry at large. And Doug has also runs the NACS We Care program, which you'll hear more about. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Cara. It's your show.
Thanks a lot, Gray. Thanks everybody for attending. As Gray said, we have well over 250 attendees, and so that just tells us and reinforces the fact that everybody is very, very concerned about skimmers at the dispensers. And you know, we're seeing so many data breaches in the U.S. because the U.S. is the last country globally to really migrate to EMV, and so not only are we seeing the data issues at the corporate level, at the POS level, but we all know firsthand in Petra that it's really, really affecting us and our bottom line at the skimmer level. So next slide, please. What you're seeing here is a news story out of Miami regarding the skimmers that have been found in Florida. You know, Florida, the state of Florida actually did a 3-month state inspection and found 103 skimmers in that 3-month period. And as of December 1st, they're citing that just the state themselves alone found 150 skimmers. And so definitely it is impacting all of us. You know, the devices are being found at small merchants, large merchants, urban, rural, new and old convenience stores. So really nobody is exempt or immune from having this issue happen. I mean, you're also seeing them at ATMs. And what's interesting is that it's gotten so much attention in Florida that the Florida state legislation has actually proposed security measures that they're asking the self-service folks with self-service fuel dispensers to adhere to. You know, it's quite interesting because it's not only found in Florida, but it's also found in the upper Midwest. And if we move to the next slide, we can show you that there are several, as Gray alluded to earlier, that there are several different news stories that continue to happen. Hardly a day goes by where there's somebody that doesn't show us, you know, that there's a skimmer. And these are just samples of the many, many different news stories about skimmers that are found. And so today we really, really want to focus on how you can mitigate the skimmers and what you can do and steps that you can take to mitigate the risk with the skimmers. Next, we want to hear from Zach at Gilbarco Veeder-Root. So we're getting reports here that there's no sound, so I'm just going to continue to go through the slides here. So essentially, we all know that your brand is at stake. And you know, we have a loss of reputation, we have a loss of customer confidence, you know, overall lost sales because of diminished store image and financial losses. So these devices come in practically every shape and size. And we're going to show several examples of things and skimmers that you can find. I mean, they are plug and play. You can see that they are affecting the card readers themselves. They go inside the dispensers. They're outside the dispensers. They're actually part of the keypad. There's an overlay on the keypad, as you can see from the bottom. And most of the time, they're very, very hard to detect. And so towards the end of this webinar, we're going to give you some helpful hints as far as how you can mitigate those risks. But first, I'd like to turn it over to, oops, I'm sorry, I skipped this slide. I'd also like to point out that they're very, very easy to get. I mean, you can literally go to a search engine like Google or Bing, and you can start searching for skimmers. Not only that, but eBay is selling them. So it's pretty hard to try and mitigate the risk when even the general public and even the some of the merchants are working against us. So now I'd like to turn it over to Luke Grant from Gilbarco to talk about some low-cost practices.
Thanks, Cara. So we'll now move into a few slides that I'll cover along with Tim Weston from Wayne Fueling Systems on some low-cost options for you to combat skimming on your forecourt today, because as you've heard so far, this is certainly not a problem that you want to delay in addressing. And later in the webinar, Tim and I will cover some other advancements in security technology that you can also consider when investing for the future. So the first thing you can do immediately is train your sales associates and store personnel with the materials we're covering today and through some of the links that we'll provide at the end of the webinar on how to identify the signs that skimming might be happening on your forecourt. With as big of an issue as this is becoming and the potential impact on your sites, these practices should absolutely be implemented as standard policy for your entire team. For your sales associates or cashiers, they should watch out for things like high levels of bad card reads or dispenser offline messages, which are really not common during normal operation and can be indications that someone is either attempting to install or has installed an internal skimming device like Cara spoke about earlier. They should also be on the lookout for other suspicious activities on the sites, like vehicles parked at the pumps for extended periods of time, which can be an indication that someone is either trying to gain access to the dispenser door or is installing an external skimming device. These thieves have been known to present themselves even as authorized technicians that are on site for unscheduled work. So to help thwart these types of attacks, you can train your associates to be extremely vigilant in checking IDs of technicians, anyone that comes on site, purporting to be a technician, and make sure that all of the technicians are actually scheduled and confirmed visits. And to make implementing this as easy as possible, we definitely recommend that you should create reference sheets that you can post near your point of sale terminals where your cashiers can see them, that covers these types of things that they can look for and how they should react if suspicious activity is spotted. So you can also train your store personnel to perform daily inspections of your sites and your dispensers to look for signs of possible skimming. In particular, looking for signs of forced entry into the dispenser, such as scratches or cuts around door locks and panels. Those can be indications that someone has gained unauthorized access inside the dispenser to install, what could be an internal skimmer. Just a few slides ago, Cara spoke about overlay skimming devices that can really look just like the real card reader or keypad. And to help identify these types of devices, your associates can look for things like abnormally protruding surfaces that are not flush with the dispenser door panels. So by becoming familiar with the normal layout of the dispenser doors on your sites, your associates can also help identify devices like cameras that might be installed in a variety of positions on the door panel that are used for things like trying to capture customers putting in their PIN number. In addition, maintaining a good line of sight to all of your dispensers is important for spotting individuals that might be engaged in installing a skimming device, especially if you have an extremely large forecourt. You might even consider having something like a roaming associate that can periodically monitor the activities on the site. And if you find out about skimmers being discovered at other locations near your sites, it's always a good idea to immediately inspect your own dispensers, as in many cases, these thieves will operate in and target very specific regions. I think it also bears mentioning while we're covering this that getting your teams accustomed to doing periodic inspections of your dispensers can also give you a low-cost method of meeting the new PCI DSS 3.0 asset tracking requirement, which requires merchants to keep an accurate and up-to-date inventory of all the payment devices installed on your site by both model number and serial number. So for your dispensers, this would include tracking things like card readers and keypads and other payment electronics components. So while you're out there inspecting your dispensers for signs of skimming, you can also validate your inventory for this PCI requirement. And also by tracking these serial numbers of the devices on your sites, you can more quickly identify if a device has been replaced in an unauthorized manner. So I'd now like to turn it over to Tim Weston, who will walk you through some additional low-cost options for combating skimming.
Thanks, Luke. Yeah, this next one, there's a lot of information, even what Luke just provided, around things that you can enable your store attendants, those associates there with the equipment every day in and day out, to be able to do. But it can seem like a daunting task to think about the extra inspection steps that would go along with this to help identify any signs of equipment tampering, or if you're got any of those scenarios coming up that you might suspect a skimmer's been placed in your dispensers. So above and beyond that, you can really move to go to the experts, and it's really working with the equipment service providers. The Gibarco and Wayne both, for these field dispensers, have networks of many hundreds of service techs that have been trained and are authorized to work on the field dispensers and understand the ins and outs of these payment terminals, the other electronics that are in those dispensers, how they all work together, and even have some visibility to the kind of skimming attacks that are being done through their access to us as equipment manufacturers. And you can rely on them heavily to be able to know what is legitimate equipment. When you look inside, this example here in the photograph on here, you can see there's a lot of electronics inside the heads of these dispensers, and you don't have to rely on the fact that any of your folks that operate the store would need to open the dispensers or look inside and try to determine which equipment is legitimate and which has been a skimmer added to the terminal. As you saw on those early diagrams, just the ones that Cara showed on the first few slides, the skimmers come in all shapes and sizes, so there isn't really a recipe book to say, hey, this is what a skimmer looks like. If you don't find that, you're good to go. It's actually quite the opposite, that we're seeing more and more new forms of skimmers coming into the marketplace all the time. Involvement with law enforcement and even Secret Service spends a lot of time analyzing the different types of devices that they're finding that are being placed to compromise this card data. So leverage those folks to be able to help you with that and understand what's in there. And the other aspect is beyond those daily checks and routine process that they would do on their own, but also be able to call these service techs and leverage those folks when they need to. Part of your corporate-wide security policy wouldn't only include routine checks and logging and reporting on those checks to make sure they're actually happening, but even the contact information and the escalation paths, so that those folks on the front lines feel empowered to be able to call in someone if they're suspicious of it, to be able to come out and do an expert evaluation of that equipment and determine if you have a skimming incident taking place or not, to be able to do that. And then finally, above and beyond that, enablement of those folks to handle it is also, understanding what the baseline is for your equipment. There's such a variety of dispensers that have been in the marketplace. They last so many years in the marketplace that you may have a variety of dispensers even across your different sites. To know the differences in all of those can be a challenging task. So you can work with the equipment providers to get to a baseline that says, hey, here's a somewhat maybe common set of payment electronics in those dispensers. You get some synergies and understanding what that baseline offering is, whether it's you've made the move already for PCI and triple DES pin pad capability in your dispensers, or even moving to more advanced secure card readers and the like. You can set that baseline with the folks to be able to understand, hey, this is my security posture of these terminals. We have this minimum level of security across the board. You'll be in a better state overall than you would be if you just have a mishmash of different types of equipment and different components in those dispensers. From that, I'll pass it over to Doug next to talk a little bit about some other methods you can also use for the dispensers.
Thanks, Tim. This is Doug Spencer from NACS Products and Services. As Gray mentioned, our solutions portfolio is out there to try to address specific pain points to help our retailers run their businesses more efficiently, which brings me here today to our We Care tamper-evident decals. As you can see, when they're in place, they're solid red. When they're breached, a void will show up. I'm going to try to keep you from reading the bullet points to you here. I just want to really stress the second bullet point, being able to log tags, to have these decals being used or buying them and putting them up and not writing down the serial number or logging it is not going to help you out. We just had somebody called into NACS that said that she had been to a convenience store and all 8 decals on all 8 of the pumps were violated, and she thought there must be a skimmer involved. So having them up there and having them not being maintained is not a best business practice. It's really good for you show your customers that you care about their ID and security, and also this is a way for your non-sophisticated technician, your personnel, to be able to kind of look at it without having to open the door and keep tabs on what's going on outside. Next slide, please. Here's a website to go to purchase the decals. This is a website that has a lot of information on it. We had a big PCI EMV block at the NACS show. A lot of those presentations are at this site. The Zach Stoner video that we missed before on the audio is available there as well. And there's also nacsonline.com/skimming, which would be a lot more specific to today's subject matter, with a lot more resources there. So with that, I think I'll just hand it back to Tim.
Thanks. Yeah, now the next thing really you look at, a lot of this discussion so far has been around increasing your opportunity to detect whether the equipment's been tampered and more quickly close the gap from the time that a skimmer was installed to the time that it would be found. There's some additional things you can do to help defend the dispensers to actually prevent the insertion of skimmers in the first place. That complements the more speedy detection, where you can actually do things to stop them from getting in the first place. Luke and I are going to cover some different levels of things in this process, and I'll start off the conversation on that side about, moving to changing the locks on your dispensers. The number of these stories in the news that come up with things, you talk about common keys or not having keys on your dispensers at all, and criminal enterprises, those folks that get into it and they understand how to get into the dispensers. All the equipment manufacturers provide different key lock programs where you can get optional locks. You can get ones that are not generic, things that are set up that can be site unique or retailer unique across your group of sites, for example. That eliminates the ability for folks that can go on the internet or be able to come up with some more common keys to be able to get into your sites. You're making your stuff unique compared to what the next guy down the street has for the dispensers. And then complementing the defending as well, there's also solutions available to be able to set off alarms, with the dispensers if the cabinet's been opened and it hasn't been done by an authorized technician on a legitimate service call. There's alarm systems that are part of the dispensers that you can purchase as well to detect that. There are ones that are as simple as modifying and understanding when the detection took place and being able to set off a local alarms, a siren alarm, and taking the dispenser offline from the controlling point of sale and site controllers, so that the associates would be notified that there's something going on here with this dispenser at that local level, and even more advanced programs where there's actually centrally monitored offerings that tie in with a help desk or a central site that can monitor your whole chain of locations to find out whenever there's been any unauthorized access or into these dispensers, and go so far as even not just reporting on that, but even dispatching or notifying a security personnel that, hey, this dispenser's been opened, you need to respond to that. So those things will really tie into to closing the gap on that as well. Above and beyond the dispenser, equipment you can add to defend it is also looking at the site as a whole. I mean, putting in video surveillance programs, that helps you, and you definitely put signage up around it to make sure that folks know that, hey, this smile, you're on camera, this site is under surveillance. These criminals that are trying to perpetrate these crimes are looking for the easy targets, dispensers they can get into easily without having a good chance of detection when they're either placing the skimmer or returning to retrieve it, or even coming back to retrieve the data, if not even the device itself. The messaging and information that, hey, there's a video surveillance there, may make them go down to the next street and not attack your site because they don't want to do anything to increase their chances of being caught. at the solution. And what goes with that, good video, of course, and quality of monitoring the site is actually lighting. You know, the places that are dimly lit, it's much easier for them to get in and get out and go undetected with doing that. So having a well-lit site, a forecourt, you know, active folks, you know, monitoring the security and in video and these other types of methods will drastically reduce the opportunity that your site would be attacked by skimmers in the first place, and if not, even cover the fact that you're going to more quickly detect those as well. I'll hand it to Luke for some additional ones.
Thanks, Tim. So in addition to the options that Tim has just covered, there are a couple other hardware and software solutions that you should consider that really can provide additional layers of security. These include upgrading your terminals to be able to accept EMV or chip card transactions, as well as adding encryption capabilities to your systems to protect your customers' card data as it travels through your network. EMV technology, which is another big topic, you know, in the news right now, that technology is primarily designed to combat counterfeit fraud, which is also a really big problem on the forecourt. And while upgrading your terminals for EMV will not counter all the methods of skimming we've covered today, it does help eliminate the threat of internal skimmers placed inside the dispenser to capture card data and PIN data as it leaves the card reader or keypad. The types of card readers and PCI compliant PIN pads that come with EMV capable terminals, both from Wayne and Gilbarco, do support encryption of the cardholder's data within the dispenser payment electronics, which is where most of the internal skimmers are placed. And these card readers can either be secure mag stripe only card readers or hybrid card readers that are capable of reading both EMV chip cards and magnetic stripe cards. So with those encryption capabilities of those card readers and those keypads, if someone does gain access to the dispenser to install an internal skimmer, all they would be capturing is useless data. The rollout of EMV in the US, I believe, will also go a long way to eliminate the threat of skimming by really removing the benefits of skimming to criminals. Even though the majority of EMV chip cards being issued, really all of the EMV chip cards being issued in the US will still have a magnetic stripe that is susceptible to skimming, a fraudulent credit card made from that stolen mag stripe data cannot be used successfully at an EMV-enabled terminal. So again, the value of that skim data goes way down. Lastly, you can look at upgrading your dispenser terminals and your point-of-sale systems to support encryption software so that the cardholder's data is always protected as it travels through your network and out to your acquirer or your payment host. And even by deploying some of these encryption solutions, there's the potential to reduce the scope of your PCI audit because your network will actually not have in the clear cardholder's data present. So I'd like to wrap up and briefly summarize the recommendations we've made today. I know it's quite a bit of material, and I'd like to summarize it in kind of 4 main points. The first one, train your teams to detect the signs of skimming around your site. Be very vigilant, as we've said before, on doing whatever you can. It's a low-cost way that you can get out there and try to just at least identify the signs with your teams. Second, update your standard policies to include daily inspections of your dispensers and security tags. Make this part of just everyday doing business on your sites. Third, evaluate the available upgrade options that Tim and I have just covered that can really provide an additional layer of protection for your equipment and your customers. And then finally, don't hesitate to report anything abnormal you find to a trained technician who can help you determine if your equipment truly has been tampered with. So I'm now going to turn it back over to Gray, who's going to provide some recommendations on what to do if you find some skimmers, actually do find skimmers at your sites.
Thanks, Luke. Unfortunately, I've had the experience over the last couple of months of dealing with several retailers who have found skimmers in their dispensers or had skimmers presented to them by Weights and Measures, who are in several states going through organized inspections of all dispensers. If you find a skimmer in your dispenser, the important thing to remember is that it doesn't necessarily mean that you've had a data breach. It means that you have reasonable cause that somebody has been in there and that there has been the capability of a data breach. But you really need to let the story unwind and unfold, and it's going to take several days, weeks, even months for you to determine whether you've had a breach and whether you've had, and to what extent there's been a breach. Remember, some of these dispenser skimmers are not Wi-Fi or Bluetooth enabled, and they require somebody to come back and pick them up to retrieve the card number. So if you find a skimmer, you've got a pretty good chance that you have all the card data that they would have gotten in your hand. So the important thing is don't get depressed. But in disaster management, and this is a disaster, as we've noted, this has got potential to hurt your brand. There's a right way to do things and a wrong way. The right way to do things is to cooperate with authorities. The wrong way is to refuse to work with authorities or make it hard to work with authorities. Remember this, first and foremost, you are a victim of a crime as well as the customers who have had their cards breached. You need to get these guys caught. You need to get these guys put out of circulation in jail. Open communication. Any company that's gone through a brand disaster or a brand crisis will tell you that open and honest communication to those folks who are earnestly looking for information from you is the best way to do it. Hiding in your office, we've all seen 60 Minutes, and the guys who hide in their office are vilified just by that act. So don't hide away. Be prepared to communicate. Ready to admit fault. We've seen so many corporate disasters where people say, well, it really wasn't our fault, it was somebody else's fault, I didn't have any responsibility. Again, 60 Minutes should tell you all you need to know about that. What we need to do is say, look, I could have done some other things, but here's what I did do. And I want to highlight this point right here. Your need to admit fault is greatly diminished if you follow the procedures that our expert panel has discussed in the prior slides. Another point on this is, think about if I had to go to court, if I was getting sued by somebody over this, what would I want to tell the judge? That I did nothing to protect my forecourt? Or here are my logs, here's my employee policy manual, here are all the things, and here's the inspection logs, here are all the things that we were doing to protect and provide commercially reasonable protection for our customers. So be ready to admit at fault, but make sure that you don't have that much fault to admit to. Furtive actions to cure. If you're caught, you didn't have any site inspections, or your tapes weren't getting checked over a period of time, immediately put out written communication to your staffing that takes care of that issue going forward. Nobody wants to see somebody get caught and then not do any apparent changes down the road. The public likes to see some contrition. Lastly, genuine concern for those affected, and I'm going to deal with this one a little bit later. You really don't want to minimize the damage and say, well, it's just a credit card, they can call in and have those charges disputed. You want to express genuine concern for your customer base that may have been affected. Immediate actions. If you find a skimmer, disable and bag both sides of the pump. Doesn't mean just tape it off, doesn't mean just put a bag on a nozzle. What you want to make sure is that the customers don't attempt sales. Remember, you've got a skimmer there. If you've got the pump offline, that skimmer, and it's still active and still with electricity, that skimmer is still going to work while that customer is sitting there trying to use the dispenser. So make sure that that thing is absolutely dark and cannot be used. Next thing is, do not tamper with the dispenser. Remember, some of these skimmers have to be retrieved. The other thing is, these thieves aren't the sharpest tools in the shed. They may have left fingerprints all over the inside of your dispenser. So when you find one, close it up, turn off the dispenser, make it go dark, don't tamper with it. Next, you contact local law enforcement. The important thing is for you to report this as a crime. Request an investigation, let them remove the skimmer, or let them have a technician remove the skimmer. Provide a copy of all your inspection logs, and I put in a hem there saying, you should have inspection logs. And the reason why this is important is if you inspected that pump yesterday, then you have established that you've inspected that dispenser and there's a reasonable expectation that that skimmer was put in the last 24 hours. That can tell the police that this is an active situation within the area. That gives alerts to all the other marketers that are out there to go and check their dispensers. And it also establishes that Even if cards were skimmed off of there, you have a finite period of time where those cards were taken off. Nothing is worse than having no log and no knowledge of how long that Bluetooth or Wi-Fi skimmer has been sitting in that dispenser. Next is request a copy of the police report. You have a right to make sure that you get a copy of that report and ensure that it is correct. Make sure that you make the corrections early on in the investigation. Then contact your supplier, brand and or franchise. Most of the major oil companies have got very large fraud inspection teams, and you want to get them engaged as soon as possible in any fraud event so that they can also help you out and assist you. Dealing with customers. I've had situations where, especially in small towns, local banks have told consumers that have been breached that, well, you got breached at XYZ convenience store, and the customers have walked through the door, and they're angry. Well, the first thing is empathize, and this is where you've got to train your frontline staff in that store, or in fact all of your stores, because quite frankly, if you're centrally located around a local area, all of your stores are going to be painted with that same patina. So you want to empathize. Understand that many of the customers, especially customers with debit cards, this may be absolutely devastating to their ability to pay their own bills, and so they can be very, very honked off about this. Please understand that. Assure them that you're cooperating with the authorities, and inform them. Provide a brief synopsis of events, especially if you are taking the time to do the daily inspections and all of the guide practices that we've put up here beforehand. Tell the customers, you know what, I inspected those dispensers every day, and it showed up today. So, you know, we have people out there who, I have a technician coming in once a month to look at the dispensers. Inform them that you were trying to look out for them. And then assure them that you've got a plan that outlines steps to being taken to prevent the future incidences, because don't forget, you don't want people saying, don't go to XYZ convenience store, they got skimmers. You don't want that to be part of your brand image. With your staff, and this is going to be very, very important, inform them of the issue, stick to the facts. They're going to be dealing with the customer backlash, so coach them on how to deal with a customer. Have them refer all in-depth inquiries to a designated person within your organization. And I would say the best practice here is determine who in your organization is going to be that person. Have them fully apprised of what's going on out there, what's being done. That person should be the focal point of all external communications. Provide a short script, though, to your cashiers. You don't want your cashiers just shrugging their shoulders and saying, I have no idea. And remember, less is more. Recognize the staff that found the device. This is very important. Make sure that your staff understands it's a good thing when they find these devices, that this is something that is expected, but also going to be praised and reinforce that staff is out there and being vigilant for you. With the press, and unfortunately this has become a favorite topic for local TV news. Let's face it, 24-hour news cycle is about death and mayhem across the globe. The local press doesn't have much death and mayhem left to talk about, so they love to talk about skimmers that are happening in dispensers. So the first thing is don't hide from inquiries or interview. Set them up, be courteous, be brief, but set them up. Don't come off as a victim, even though you are. You're a victim of crime, that's fine, but don't come off as being the victim here. Be affiliative and not defensive or angry. You can be angry at the thieves, you can be angry at the people that would do this to your customers, but don't be defensive or angry at the press questions. Do express a genuine concern for customers. In fact, that should be your first statement in any press interview. Explain your preventative policies and actions that you were doing beforehand and any improvements that you're going to have afterwards. And explain that you're working with all the authorities and you're fully cooperating to bring this to an end. So with that, I'd like to conclude the PowerPoint presentation portion of this webinar. I'd like to turn this over to Kara Gunderson, who is going to entertain any questions that have come in from the audience.
Thanks, Gray, and thanks to all of our panelists today, to Luke and Tim, and great information. You know, just wanted to recap a couple of things. Is to, you know, Luke had mentioned that EMV is really a great time to upgrade your forecourt. You know, you get upgraded lighting. If you do that, you can get savings on electricity costs that can help offset the cost of security measures, help offset the cost of your EMV. And you know, some of the other best practices that Gray alluded to was to, and I think all of them did, is to inspect your field dispensers daily. You know, some folks that I'm aware of require every shift change to go out and check the receipt paper in the field dispensers. That's a great time to also go out and check for skimmers. I also know of other companies that have actually taken photos of the inside and the outside of their dispensers, and they have a book, and so every time their employees go out and check the field dispensers, they can compare the photos to what they see inside and outside the dispensers. So that's a really good way, because as you know, as Tim and Luke both showed you, when you get inside the dispenser, it's quite daunting when you see all the electrical that's associated with it. So, and most importantly is really have a plan in place, and put your plan together now, because unfortunately it's almost not if, it's almost when. And so having a plan in place now really helps lower the stress level, and making sure that all employees know what they should be doing, all store personnel, and make that part of your policies and procedures. So with that, we would encourage everybody to use the question panel that's part of the GoToWebinar session. It's on the right side of your screen. There's a section that's called questions, and if you could please type your questions there, and then we will do our best to answer the questions. Now, keep in mind that about an hour after we conclude the webinar today, you will receive the link. The link is going to take you to a very short survey, and I believe it's SurveyMonkey. And from there, if you complete the survey, you will get a link to this presentation that you can download. You can share it with your employees or whomever. And also within that, there's also going to be a link which includes a ton of links for all the resources that we've talked about today. You know, like where you can buy the security seals, where you can find, you know, the We Care program, and you know, the We Care program was put together jointly by NACS and Connexus, formerly PCATS, and it's really a great program, and fairly simple to follow, because it kind of follows the PCI standards, and it's recently been updated as well to reflect the latest PCI DSS requirements for merchants. So again, I would encourage you to ask questions. There's no such thing as a dumb question, because you know, everybody has different levels of education on this, and so, and you know, there are some who could probably you know, help us with the webinar here. So and then also lastly, I'd like to just mention that the sessions are only as good as the questions. So the more questions that you guys ask, I think the better and more information that we'll get out of it. So some of the questions that have come through so far have been on the security tapes, and what we encourage you to do is to purchase the security tape or the labels or stickers with the serial numbers. It's really important that not only are you buying the seals, but you're also buying those with serial numbers, and then equally important is to make sure that your cashiers are tracking those serial numbers. You know, Luke had mentioned the new PCI requirements for merchants this year is to do asset tracking, and that is to make sure that you're doing inventory of all of your serial numbers and model numbers of everything that's touching cardholder data. So this is also a really good thing to track as part of your asset management, and because, you know, unfortunately somebody could be very deceiving and pose as an oil company or an owner of a convenience store and purchase labels with the intent that doesn't own one. So there could be very malicious intent. So it's really important that not only do you use the serial number labels, but that you also track the serial numbers on the labels. So we have quite a few questions coming through, and I will try and answer them as best I can. So thanks everybody for all the great questions. Wow, we have a ton of them. That's great. So first question that we had is, we indicated that skimmer devices can be purchased online, and can they also purchase a security tape online? Yes, they can. So that kind of goes back to what I just mentioned regarding the serial number tracking of the security seals. And I think we had a question to go back to, let's see here. How do we know that skimmers have not been bought by, how how do we know skimmers have not bought security stickers? That is along the same lines. We don't, unfortunately. There is
Kara,
a place. Yes,
Kara, this is Doug Spencer. I just want to jump in that our vendor does have the ability kind of to track on their sales, to do help with some logistics as far as forensics, but when NACS decided to sell these decals, we decided to sell them to the entire industry and not to just cut people off at the NACS membership. So there is going to be some possibility in vetting everybody, but like you said, to use those decals and use the serial numbers is really the important part of it. And want to let people know that we are looking at an app, a handheld phone app to go along with the decals, and we should be seeing something from us in the near future on that. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's great. And Doug, if you would please stay on the line too. Do you know if they also provide customized stickers? So like if somebody wanted, Jack's Gas and Oil printed
Absolutely.
on them? Okay.
Yeah, just go to the same link, and the contact will take you to the Titan Brooks page, and they can either order or they can inquire about doing something specifically, and those guys are happy to do it. They've done it before. We haven't put a ton of marketing behind this because we share so much of the pipeline, but we've handled hundreds of orders, and thousands of our decals are out there. And we stressed that to the news people. There was a report where a reporter went out and bought those, and we try to do whatever we can to vet, but we just it's impossible for us to control. Especially through a third-party vendor who goes out there, but that company does have the ability to look back on sales they've made and find people, track people down that were using stickers in an untoward manner.
Great, thank you, Doug. Another question that came through is, are there one-pagers available of quick facts to do training or send out electronically? I would say, if you go back to the We Care program, there's actually a separate document, but it's within the We Care section that was created for store personnel, and it's kind of like a little checklist that you can check off that will help in your cashier training, and that's more for PCI compliance, but also you could certainly add to the list yourself and do some of these things that we're talking about today.
Kara, if I can add on that, we have on the Conexxus website, if you go to resources and webinars, under this webinar, we also put together a PDF page that has got links, linked resources to all of these documents. So yes, we have a store personnel training guide template that we created a couple of years ago in the Data Security Committee. That's up there. That's in that link page as well. So many of the links that you're looking for will be there, so you can just download, click on it, and go right to the page.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a question for the greater group of panelists here. What percentage of skimmers found transmit their data electronically to another point nearby the pump? Again, it's what percentage of the skimmers found transmit their data electronically to another point nearby the pump?
And Cara, this is Luke. Maybe I'll jump in. Well, I don't know exactly from a percentage standpoint. You do see a variety of methods for obtaining the data that is stolen through skimmers. In some cases, the thief would actually have to return to the pump to get that manually, but in many cases, I think it's a larger percentage where they're using transmitters to send it either to another device that's hidden nearby the dispenser, or where a thief can actually pull up into, in their car into the parking lot and download the captured data, from the skimmer remotely. So there's a variety of ways that the captured data is being transmitted, but unfortunately I don't know the exact percentage. Tim, would you have any other comments on that?
Yeah, thanks, Luke. It would be hard to kind of assess the sort of that ratio of transmitting versus the older style. And I think in general we could say we're seeing more and more of the more advanced technology ones. In years past, the ones that did remote transmissions were very based on older technology, and with the more common use of things like Bluetooth technology or low frequency, low power radio wave type things. You see these the criminals that are doing this are well educated in electronics technology, and they're taking advantage of these new methods to be able to avoid having to come back to open the cabinet a second time to get to the data. So it's hard to say. I know the Secret Service at a federal level tries to gather information across law enforcement agencies to get that data and they've seen quite a variety of it, but there's no way to tell from an equipment provider standpoint of kind of the percentage. Just know that it's growing.
Great, thank you. There was a comment, someone indicated that there is a UL listed dispenser access alarm that's available. So I won't put any of our dispenser manufacturers out there, but I do know that they offer something similar. So next question is, what does EMV stand for? It stands for EuroPay, MasterCard, and Visa. And you might know that EuroPay obviously is one of the currencies in Europe. And since Europe was the first one to create sort of this technology of the chip card, they named it EuroPay, which is in conjunction with MasterCard and Visa. So that's what EMV stands for. Great question. Do you have a photo of an external skimmer? Gray, if you're in charge of the slides, or Ann, could we go back to what to the slide that shows the bezel as well as the skimmers there?
Let's see if I can get to that slide.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that. In the meantime, there's another question. Do we have an example of a daily inspection log? And Doug, do you know if that's part of the We Care program? I don't recall that it is.
No, every time that we put one out, people were wanting to tweak it or put it in their own, so we decided that it was just too unique to each site to supply one on their own. I think hopefully the app will solve some of that problem, but there's not one currently, just because one cookie cutter one didn't seem to fit for everybody.
Okay. Okay.
There is an example in the employee training guide.
Okay. Great. Great.
There, I'm sorry, just found that picture. If you take a look at the card reader on the right, that's got a skimmer attached to it on the outside.
You can see it's actually an attachment. It's longer than the one on the left.
And there was another question that I saw. Has anybody ever seen a skimmer on an EMV device? I actually pulled down a picture of a EMV-enabled ATM machine, Société Générale Bank vestibule ATM machine in Paris, April of 2015, and it had a mag-stripe skimmer on there. EMV, the problem here is that as long as there are mag stripes on the back of cards, there will always be skimmers, because the card not present, the online realm hasn't figured out a way to resolve using EMV's capabilities online. And so there still is this mag stripe, and so people will always skim it, because even if they can't use it at a brick and mortar retailer, they can still use it to buy merchandise online. And so that's really the problem we have here. EMV is going to, as our panelists noted, EMV is going to take away the ability, because of the requirements of the UPT, it's going to take away the ability to do an internal skimmer. That's great news, because that's where most of our skimmers are going. But you're still going to have people trying to skim mag stripe.
Thanks, Gray. Okay. We have another question. Does NACS offer security seals for the external card reader as well as the CRIND door? Doug, can you answer that question?
Yeah, I just, in browsing some photos, getting ready for today's presentation, I saw the same exact decals or ones just like it, branded by some major oil companies, were used the same way. They just took those decals and wrapped it around the reader. I'm not sure if that's a best practice, but that's one way I've seen. But right now we are in that decal and the sizes that are up there only, not one specifically made to wrap around that hardware.
Okay, great. Gray, this may be a question for you. Is there any talk about qualifications or training for people doing pump inspections, or maybe that's even a question for Luke or Tim?
Well, you know, we were talking about this today in the Data Security Committee meeting. You know, dispensers are out of scope generally with PCI. That's been fortunate for us, because, you know, we always tend to be this outlier. Doesn't mean that we don't have the responsibility for protecting those things, but PCI hasn't come out with specific directives about fuel dispensers. But we've always said that it's best for us to use the same practices we've used for PCI on the inside, on the outside for our dispensers. And what we do know, and what we talked about on the data security call today, is that when it comes to PADSS or certified solutions, PCI solutions being installed in stores, there is a movement by Visa and ostensibly through the acquirers as well, that there be trained and certified people to put those in so that they follow the implementation guidelines of each one of those point-of-sale devices. I could see where we as an industry and this group could actually work very closely with the distributors and the folks who are doing the dispenser repairs and servicing to bring up their level as well. Whether there's a certification program or not, I don't know. We don't usually push for those, but certainly these guys have a vested interest in making sure that they know what the latest and greatest is from a data security standpoint.
Thanks, Gray. Question for, I guess for any of the panelists, do we have any percentages of effectiveness, or any sort of rating of effectiveness when security locks are replaced or when we're using security alarms on our dispensers? Are there any stats out there for that at this point yet, or is it still too new? Anybody know?
Yeah, this is Tim. I can chime in. I don't think there's you know, a place where there's stats or aggregated. I know there was some discussion in the data security committee about some reporting databases and things to help share knowledge and across retailers for when skimming incidents take place and the like. But just the actual, you know, use of things like unique locks or active monitoring systems and the like. You know, those systems in themselves would reduce the opportunity or shorten the detection time on it as well for it. From the ones that we have deployed and our folks, you know, they're on top of it. If a report comes in or an alarm is sent, it helps to defend that. But there isn't like a centralized industry database that I'm aware of that would kind of give you those types of statistics. Great.
Thanks, Tim. And the database that Tim was alluding to is on the Conexxus website, and you don't have to be a member. And it's you go to Conexxus.org, and then it's under resources. And there we encourage all merchants to, and you can anonymously, we don't track IP addresses or anything like that. You can log any skimmers that you find, and obviously the more that people use that and log skimmers found, the greater the information is for the rest of the industry. So another question is, how common are skimmers fastened to the outside of the dispenser in relation to skimmers on the inside? Do we have any stats on you know, what is the more popular skimmer, outside versus inside, like on the bezel or inside the dispenser?
I can tell you that anecdotally that all of the merchants that I've dealt with in the last 3 months who have been skimmed, they were all internal, and the merchants were taking no precautions beyond having a regular service tech go out every couple of months and check inside of the dispenser. That's the only common thread. They were all internal that I saw.
Okay, great.
Yeah, and Cara, I can add to that. When you think about the use of those skimmers, the amount of effort and things to design, you know, card skimmers, as you mentioned, those components they can find online. The little magstripe reader skimmers are very common. Being able to strip down the plastic housing off those and put them in even wrapped in, you know, electrical tape and things like that to put them inside the dispenser is a very easy method. Low chances of detection on that because it's inside where both the site attendants nor the consumers that fuel would even realize that it's there. When they look at trying to build skimmers for the outside, that requires a lot more effort and design to try to cosmetically replicate the plastic housing, or, you know, in readers that even don't protrude, you know, be able to put ones on flush-mounted card readers to make that less visible to someone. Those types of skimmers have a much higher chance of being detected because they actually look different from the outside. So I'd say the ones that we, you know, heard reported back through Wayne, just in general from law enforcement or retailers, like Gray said, we're seeing the same thing. It's very rare for us to see an external skimmer, and quite popular to see ones that are, you know, internal and plugged right into the cables that connect the card readers to the other electronics.
You know, oddly enough, that skimmer that we're seeing up here on the screen is for sale online at eBay, and they want to charge $200 for that housing. So that housing costs more than the electronics that are required to actually skim. So it's, you know, it's a matter of cost benefit, right? They're going to go inside your dispenser. That's where they want to go.
Great. We had another question, and it was related. Actually, we've had a couple questions similarly related. That, you know, is there technology within the fuel dispensers to, you know, how sometimes we see the indoor pin pads go into tamper mode? Is there that type of technology that's available at the fuel dispenser when a skimmer is added or when something's touched or compromised in that manner? Luke, I'll let you go first.
Absolutely. So, you know, most secure devices include a certain level of protection to where if they are tampered with in a way that's not a normal, you know, what a technician would be doing, would essentially wipe the encryption keys or shut down the reader so that you can't continue to take cards there that, you know, could just add to the amount that has already, you know, that has been skimmed. So those protections exist today on products that are available, as well as you know, additional solutions that Tim mentioned as well about detecting when people actually get into the pump to let you know that you know, at least a door has been opened, whether it's scheduled or unscheduled. You can take those indications and use that to help identify if somebody's in there in an unauthorized manner. Great.
Tim, anything to add to that?
Yeah, of course. You know, there's really, you're looking at layers of security with this, and what we're seeing in these skimmers is most commonly these crimes are being perpetrated against equipment that's dated. You know, a standard type of MagStripe card reader without any encryption capability. You know, as Luke mentioned earlier about secure MagStripe card readers or even hybrid chip card readers. That newer technology, those devices not only encrypt the data that's traveling between the card readers, the keypads, and the other electronics in the dispenser, but they also have, you know, authentication in there to make sure that those are legitimate devices. And since they're encrypting the data, you know, that travels between them, the value of getting, you know, a skimmer in there is taken away. The challenge is that these crimes are being committed in large on this older technology with, you know, just very simple, low-level MagStripe card readers. So retailers wanting to invest in their technology that can do away with that by leveraging the technology that's readily available. I know secure MagStripe card readers have been, you know, available in the market for, you know, about 5 years now, at least on that front, and EMV ready chip readers have been out for a few years as well. So that's really where they can look at is, you know, investing in that kind of equipment to actually defend against, you know, someone putting a skimmer in and detecting if it is. Cara, back to you. I think you might be on mute if you're talking.
Sorry, I was. Thank you. We've had lots of questions today around the security seals. You know, like people cutting them, and so that you can't see the void or whatever have you. And one of the things that I was going to suggest is some folks actually use like a black light pen, and then that actually came in as a suggestion from someone. But someone said we purchased silver paint pens and placed a mark on the underneath portion of the card reader. The managers check to make sure the paint mark is visible every day, also along with checking the stickers. You know, another thing you could do if you haven't replaced the universal locks, obviously, is to put that black light marker or that silver paint pen over the lock to see if anybody's, you know, tried to get into the lock as well. And and some other suggestions here. And but I think we're really run out of time, and we will try, and if we did not answer your question, we encourage you to, can we go to the Conexxus website and have them ask their questions there? Is there an information?
Cara, what they can do is any question that you have about really any technology, but specifically data security in this webinar, please address your emails to info@conexxus.org, or you can send it to me directly, gtaylor@conexxus.org, and we will do our best to get the right answer to you or the right person in touch with you.
Great. So I want to thank everybody for joining me today, and again, please look for your link at the end of the webinar, or an hour from now, and you can go ahead and click on the link, fill out the survey, and then you will get access to this PowerPoint presentation as well as the resources that Greg mentioned. So thanks everybody, and have a great day.